Welcome to the second half of what I read in July, and there are 13 books in here. So we have 6 romances, 5 cozies, and 2 thrillers. And usually I go through in the order, like just randomly, like the order in which I read them, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to anybody. So this time we're going to group them together. I'm going to go through all the romances from like the 5-star to the 1, and then we're going to go through all of the cozies, same thing, the best to the worst, and the thrillers. So let's get started. And also, I have a special clue number 4, as promised, on the super secret project that Molly and Courtney and I have been working on together. So make sure to watch this to the end if you want clue number 4. Hi everyone, I'm Lisa, author of the Frosted Misfortunes Cozy Mystery Series starring my own little kitty cat, Lucky. On this channel, we talk all about mysteries, whether they're books, TV shows, or movies. So if this sounds like you or something you might be interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button below. I post new videos every Tuesday. I know I said I'd give the clue at the end, but I don't want to torch you. So clue number 4 on the secret project is that it is for both cozy mystery readers and for cozy mystery authors. So it is an event to celebrate everybody who loves cozy mysteries as well as the people who write it. Now, clue number 5 will be dropping in this Thursday's Cozy Escape newsletter. So if you're not a member of that list, a subscriber, make sure to sign up below. The other clues, 2 of them were given out during live streams for the book clubs, and one of them dropped in the Paracozy book club newsletter. So make sure to sign up for all the newsletters so you get everything. All right, so let's get into that list. I read 6 romances, 5 cozies, and 2 thrillers. So the first romance is my favorite one. It is Loathe at First Sight by Suzanne Park, and I give this one a 5. Now, heat level, this romance has 0. Suzanne Park is a young adult author, and I've noticed when young adult authors write romance, sometimes like the sex scenes are just awful and awkward. Like in The Royals Next Door, it was terrible. She had sex in her bedroom with her mom down the hall, which I feel like is maybe fun and risque if it's a high school young adult book, but like as an adult book, that's just kind of creepy and it grosses me out. I'm going off on a tangent now about the sex scenes, but I've noticed that there's been a trend, like Christina Lauren's books no longer have sex in them either, even though they used to be very steamy. So maybe this is like a new trend, and I feel like it's totally okay for rom-com especially. And this book did not suffer at all from not having sex. It was still a total 5. So what I loved about this book is I actually just laughed out loud. Like usually some books are funny or humorous and you kind of like chuckle, or you kind of read something and you're like hardy har har. Like I could see how that was supposed to be really funny, but this one was straight out hilarious. So I loved it just for that factor. I don't think I've read a book since the first time I discovered Janet Ivanovich's book that actually made me laugh like that. So super excited about all of her books. And so this one is basically about a woman who does game designs, and she has this office mate that she doesn't really like, and she gets stuck working with this intern who, it sounds like he's in college. He's not. He's an MBA intern. So there's like maybe a small difference, like 29 and 25 or something. And so they just don't get along. And plus he's the nephew of the CEO, so he gets special treatment. And the 2 of them just don't get along, and they have to get this app up and running for the company, and it's supposed to help her career. So in the meantime, all the funny stuff is that she has traditional Korean parents that are like trying to set her up, get her married, want her to get a better job, and then so does he. And so it's just kind of like a funny dynamic, as well as she's in this other girl's wedding, which is also, I don't know how they just weaved it in. It was just, it all worked. It's perfect. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but I highly recommend this book. The second book is an oldie that I just never read. It's Anyone But You by Jennifer Crusie. I don't even know when it was published, like 30 years ago or something, or no, one of the guys is 30. I gave this book a 5. It's a really short read, and it's about a woman who is divorced, and major points for Jennifer Crusie in this book, because this is not someone who was cheated on. She's just someone in the suburbs who was like, woke up one day and thought, this is boring. I wanted my life to be more than this, divorces her husband and moves into the city and into an apartment and gets this cute dog. Anyways, she teaches the dog to go down the fire escape so that it could go to the bathroom out in the backyard. But for whatever reason, the dog obviously gets confused on the fire escape on the way up and goes into her neighbor's apartment, who is a super hot emergency room doctor. So she's 40, he's 30. It's like a big deal that there's such a big age difference. But I totally loved this book. The next one is The Dating Dare by Jayci Lee. And this is number 2 in the Sweet Mess series. These are her rom-com books because she does have like some steamier, more serious contemporary romances from Harlequin. But this is like a happy-go-lucky one. And this book I gave a 4 to. And really the only reason I didn't give it a 5 is because it did have a cliche, like anti-feminist scene in it. And you know how like judgy I am about like, I just want all of my heroines to be strong, independent, and like, I don't want them to be damsels in distress that need to be saved. So it just had this one scene where she gets blackout drunk, throws up all over herself, and then he has to save her and clean her up and take care of her. And so that was like, I don't know. I know they did that in 50 Shades of Grey as well. I didn't like it there either, even though I did like that story. I know people judge it. I love 50 Shades of Grey. Anyways, this story is about these two, this couple, again, another Korean couple, just like the other book from Suzanne Park. And Suzanne Park and Jayci Lee are both Korean, as am I. So maybe that's the reason I picked up this book and I loved it so much as well. So anyways, they have a dare that they need to go on 4 dates before he leaves for Paris, I believe. So it's kind of like a no strings attached sort of fling, but they end up falling for each other. But it's very cute back and forth in all their little dates. Number 4 is A Taste of Sage by Yaffa Santos. And I gave this book a 1, mostly because I was bored. I was listening to it on audiobook, and there were points at time at which I just didn't know what they were talking about, and I also just didn't really care. So basically she has a restaurant, it goes out of business, boo-hoo. So then she has to work for a French chef as his sous chef, and so she just feels like she's like very indignant and angry about it, which, I mean, it's Manhattan. You're lucky that you got a sous chef job, especially a very nice French restaurant. And also at the same time, she's supposed to have this weird magical ability where when she eats somebody's food, she is able to tell what kind of person they are or their emotions or something like that. And I guess it just didn't make a lot of sense to me because she doesn't really use it for anything useful. And plus, like at the same time, I guess when I think about it, I don't cook, right? And maybe this is more of a me thing. I don't cook, and a lot of other people I don't know don't cook. And especially when you're in Manhattan, in New York City, nobody's cooking. We're all going out and meeting each other for brunch or for drinks or tapas or something else. And so it seemed more like a skill to have in a small town in a magical book, and there was really no other magical elements to it. So yeah, so the whole thing just didn't work for me, which I was, I'm not into paranormal books, but I was totally okay when it said she can like do something magical, but she really doesn't do anything magical with the skill. She just kind of judges other people and is very condescending. So yeah. And then the next book is You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Daria. And I gave this book a 1. It was such a huge disappointment because it was advertised as Jane the Virgin meets Kiss Quotient, which honestly I didn't like Kiss Quotient. It was like one of the most disappointing books from Helen Wong, but I do love Jane the Virgin, right? So it's about a telenovela star, and then she ends up getting another co-star that she wasn't planning for, but he's like someone from that does movies normally, but it's almost like he's kind of been demoted into this telenovela. Anyways, the thing that I loved about Jane the Virgin is that everybody, no matter what they're trying to do, they kind of like have a heart of gold. They care about people. They care about family. And in this book, both the main character and the guy care about nothing but themselves. They're completely vapid people that are all into their image, and they're honestly just mean to each other. So she starts out like, sounded like it was going to be a strong feminist novel. She starts out and she's like, I have this leading lady plan where she's like going to take back control and be in charge of her career. And then at the end, like she just cries and throws it away. And I don't know. It was just, everything they did to each other was awful. Plus, like the first half, they're not even together. They're just like in their own world again, because they're like all self-consumed about themselves. And then when they finally do kind of like hang out, they just all of a sudden have insta love and great passionate sex. It like, I don't know. It just didn't work. It didn't feel like they really had any chemistry, especially because he was such a jerk. So That was that book. The last romance is Dating-ish by Penny Reid. Now, this is number 6 in the Knitting in the City series, and I haven't read the first 5, so maybe I would have liked this more if I had. I gave this book a 1 as well. So basically, she is someone who enjoys knitting, and she lives in the city, and she gets catfished on a date with this guy who's doing research to build an artificial intelligence to replace, like, people for dating. And they waste so much time talking. I felt like I was being preached at. Like, they waste all this time talking about cuddling and how you can hire people to cuddle you and how this is like new and exciting, which, I mean, this book was written in 2017 and Craigslist has been around since 1995. So I feel like hiring people for cuddling has been around since 1995, and you can hire people to hold your hand, right? Like, it's basically like an escort service that they're like acting like is some like new novel idea. And anyways, they kind of go back and forth, and he's supposed to be like this nerd and socially awkward, but he just kind of comes across as like weird and creepy. And then all of a sudden he's like amazing in bed somehow. So yeah, it was just another one of those. I didn't really feel like the characters were connecting. And on top of that, he was seeing somebody else. And so she walks in on him about to see somebody else. And then he changes his mind at the last minute because he sees her, not because he actually likes her. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't think those books are like my style. So those were the 6 romances. So let's move on to cozy. So the first cozy is Dearly Departed by Kate Collins. And this is number 3 in the Flower Shop Mysteries. And yes, this is the Flower Shop Mysteries that is Brooke Shields on, well, used to be on the Hallmark Channel. I think they stopped making those a long time ago. But I gave this book a 5. I actually didn't realize it was Jane Collins from the Flower Shop. I just saw it came up in my queue. I totally forgot about that. I started listening to it. I absolutely loved this book. It was hilarious. It was funny. She was spunky. She was good at investigating. She had a nice family around her. Basically, she goes to her cousin's wedding and she is a bridesmaid. I don't think she's a maid of honor, but she's doing the flowers for her cousin's wedding as well. And then another cousin, like a cousin's second room, I don't know how it works, but the girl getting married, her other cousin also shows up, and then her ex-boyfriend, who's the father of her kid, gets murdered at the wedding. So they go off in this whole tangent because I think it sounds like they're Amish, like her other cousin's family. I didn't really understand, but they live out in a farm and stuff. And so anyway, so she goes out and investigates, and her ex-boyfriend shows up, her ex-fiance as well, because her cousin was marrying into that family. So everything's kind of interconnected. Again, I think if I had read books 1 and 2, I probably would have understood it a little better, but it still did a great job. I love this book. Highly recommend this series. The next book is True Confessions by Ruth Hartzler. And this is number 1 in the Amish Cupcake Mysteries. You know what I've realized? I think I like Amish cozy mysteries, which is so odd. I really know nothing about I think I'm just fascinated by like the Amish world and Amish characters and like all the rules and stuff. I don't know, but I love Amish. So this is another Amish mystery. I gave this one a 5. So it starts out basically there's identical twin women who usually I don't like. I avoid all stories about twins because I feel like they're so cliche. Like you just know what the plot is, right? They're going to switch identities, blah, 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 right? So this one was really good though. So she for 30 years has been with her husband who just one day up and decides he wants to marry someone younger, right? So whatever. So she leaves him, goes back to her sister in the Amish country because she shunned being Amish once she decided that she wanted to just live a regular non-Amish life. And then her and her sister, even though they're identical twins, no one can really tell. So you get that a lot. Anyways, there's a realtor that wants to buy her sister's Amish cupcake shop. And he ends up getting killed. He's poisoned, but it's not in the cupcakes that he ate because he was eating some of the sample cupcakes off of the display counter. It was actually, he was like poisoned somewhere else. So the funny part though is that when she goes to investigate, she like dresses up as her sister and pretends like she's Amish. And when she goes to investigate, she said she's just asking questions so she can pray for people because it's the Amish way. And then on top of that, there are 2 roommates that are with her. So for 6 months, these roommates have been off on a cruise, and they're sisters, and they're hilarious. So they bring back this cat. So the cat on the cover, like, obviously looks very much like I hate you people, and he does. So they are like, I think it's supposed to be funny. I think he's called Mr. Crumbles or Mr. Cuddles or something. And so every time they go to hold him, he like hisses, he bites them, he scratches them. She's like, oh, the cat's upset. But really, the cat just hates all of them. They just adopted this cat and are forcing it to stay with them. So anyways, very funny. Highly recommend that. Also, and yeah, I mean, it was Amish-ish, but not like hardcore Amish like some of the other books, like Amanda Flower books. So I found it very entertaining. And for some reason, there's a Scottish detective in here called McLeod who has a Scottish brogue. So if you like that, it got incorporated into this novel as well. All right, the next one is the Murder, I want to get this right, Murder, Curlers, and Cream by Valentine Beaumont. No, that is not the name of the author. That's the name of the series, the Valentine Beaumont Mystery. So I gave this book a 3, mostly because there was nothing wrong with it. It was, well, there were some things wrong with it. I don't know why I said that. It felt like it should have been in the 1980s. I looked at the copyright. I think it was printed in 2017, so it's very recent, but all of the jokes and the insults are very 1980s. Like what you could get away with, like calling people names and fat shaming people was totally, I'm not saying it's okay, but it was like totally like normal in 1980s dialogue and movies and books. And that's kind of what this reminded me of. So, and it's also, I would say 90% romance, 10% of a mystery. Like solving the mystery is like, I guess just something she happens to be doing, but someone ends up dead in her beauty shop, and she does spas and facials, and she does people's hair, and she's stuck with this cousin that is awful at doing people's hair, hits people, like abuses people, insults people, and she, I guess, is going to keep her employed even though nobody likes her and she's a huge liability. And then she has a very cliche gay best friend, very like 1980s, that like flamboyant gay guy. And so the two of them, the cousin that she has to hire and the 1980s gay guy, they just go at it with like straight up like awful insults at each other. Like he's always calling her fat, and he's like, how did you fit through the door? And you're so ugly, and those kind of jokes. And then the main character just laughs at them all the time. So I was a little mortified by that. But again, if this book had been written in the 80s, which maybe it was, and it just got published in 2017, I could see how that would be okay if you like that kind of humor. Also, at the same time, she doesn't really seems like a damsel in distress all the time, just running around and not really having a purpose. And she's always like, there's a lot of sexual innuendos too about the detective that she thinks is hot. So again, that's why I was saying it was more 90% romance, which there's nothing wrong with if you're wanting to read a romance. So this might be the book for you. And I looked it up. This book won some romance writing awards. So it really is more like a romance, but it definitely says, the Valentine Beaumont Mysteries. Also, the other thing that was a little weird is that it sounded like it was book 2 in the series. So everybody in town knows her as the woman that solved some other mystery and butted her nose into all this stuff. And so they keep alluding to that, but I double checked. This is definitely book 1 in the series. So not really sure where that came from. So, but again, I gave it a 3. It wasn't terrible, which, I'm not afraid to give out 1s or 2s. It was entertaining, but again, it had all those other things in it. So moving on, the next book is from Beard to Eternity by Sherry Harris, I believe. This is number 1 in the Chloe Jackson Sea Glass Saloon mystery. So I gave this book a 2. And the reason I gave it a 2 is because, 1, I'm really not into beer, which I was kind of worried because I find beer like repulsive and gross. And I think of like people just belching all the time. But she only has 1 beer in this whole book because she's homeless. Why is she homeless? It's the weirdest thing. So it is like the total antithesis of a strong female lead. She is a librarian from Chicago. She takes a leave of absence when her friend from college dies to go down to the saloon that his mother owns in Pensacola and ask her for a job. So it's a bar, and supposedly on this beach bar during like high tourist season, she just has 1 employee. And so she comes in and she's like, oh, can I work for you? And the the woman's like, no. And then the other bartender's like, no, we could use the help. And so they hire her on the spot, even though she has zero bartending experience and zero bartending knowledge, right? So she's a librarian. So you'd think like if that was her job to go there and help, she would like bone up on some books on reading about drinks. So it's like, it's supposed to be funny, but it's not. Like someone orders an old fashioned. She's like, an old fashioned what? Milkshake? Like she doesn't know what it is. Then she has no idea what a Tom Collins is, like really basic drinks. And then on top of that, whenever someone orders a drink she doesn't know, she just lies and she tells them, you know what, mimosas are 50% off. And even though they're not, so she's like hurting this woman's, like, she's just changing the pricing. And then on top of it, she like thinks it's funny that she makes the mimosas with like zero alcohol. She's like, yeah, I barely put any alcohol in there. I just put orange juice because they're so stupid, like the tourists or whatever. So I don't know. It just didn't give me like the warm fuzzies. And so anyways, back to the homeless part. So she goes down and she doesn't have a plan. She clearly has plenty of money because at one point she's like, maybe I should just get a hotel room tonight and get room service, which is obviously very expensive, right? So, but in the meantime, because she can't find a place to live, she is going to the marina and just like sleeping in her friend's boat, the one that's dead. And she said she's sleeping under the tarp, which if you've never been to Pensacola, it is hot, like super hot. Like even at night, it gets down to like maybe 95 and it's crazy humid. You would suffocate to death underneath a tarp out on a marina. Plus those marinas, they're like, you have to get permission to go out on the marina. You can't just walk onto a marina onto anyone's boat. So there was that. So, and then in the morning, what she does before she goes into the bar to work, she goes to the beach to rinse off. And I mean, I don't even know how bad that would smell. Like the whole time I was like, this must be like so gross. So anyways, what was the murder? So the murder in the book is that some restaurant patron is murdered in there, and for whatever reason, they think that the owner of the Sea Glass Saloon did it. And the owner doesn't even really like her and never really talks to her. But the guy that got killed was known for being crazy because he wore an armadillo hat, which means that he had killed an armadillo and then stuck it on his head, which armadillos carry leprosy. Everybody in Pensacola knows that. And the reason I know that is because my parents lived there for 20 years. Like right after high school, like that's where I came to visit. That was kind of like the home base for like 20 years. So maybe I didn't live there long enough to know anything about Pensacola, but you don't touch armadillos. Like everybody knows that. So I looked up the stat too, like 16% of the armadillos in Florida do carry leprosy. So it's gross. Anyways, so on top of that, she keeps calling everything. And I think it's just her bad luck that I lived in Pensacola pretty much for 20 years while my parents were there. So she has geographical impossibilities where she's like, I took a jet ski from Fort Pickens over to Destin, and then I walked over to Fort Walton Beach. Like it's not physically possible to do all of those things. Anyways, so, and she's talking about places that I've been to. I know all of those locations and how far they are. And on top of that, she keeps calling everything, I think she said Redneck Riviera like 100 times in this book. Nobody down there calls themselves the Redneck Riviera. Nobody, like she runs into people that aren't even white. And she's like, yeah, we all call ourselves rednecks. They don't call themselves, like nobody has ever in my entire 20 years, again, maybe it wasn't long enough, has ever called themselves a redneck while I was there. So these were all the things that I had wrong with this book. So that I probably won't be reading any more books in this series. The next one is Knockout by Mia Gold. And this is number 1 in the Holly Hand series. And I give this book a 2. So I thought that was going to be like a fun Janet Ivanovich kind of heist book. So the way the description sounded was totally different than the actual book. It sounds like she's stealing cars to make money. And I thought it was going to be fun and zany. So I was totally open for something that was not realistic and then a little out there. But instead, she's a fighter, like punch, knock you out kind of fighter. And she throws a fight and it's to get a payout so that she can get money to pay for her daughter's medical expenses. Now, 2 things are wrong with this. 1, her daughter is an 8-year-old with aplastic anemia. There is no way that I believe in any universe that her insurance is not going to cover a life-saving medical procedure for her daughter so that she has to now go out and do illegal activities. And then on top of that, because the first car that she has to steal she gets pulled over and there's a dead body in the trunk. So now she's in jail. So I just feel like she makes it sound like she's such a responsible mom, but I don't think anyone with a kid would do that. Like if you really wanted your kid to have good insurance, then just get a 9-to-5 job as a secretary, and then you'll have medical insurance that will cover your daughter. Anyways, so she supposedly needs all this money for this like life-saving treatment. Then on top of it, then she needs money because all of a sudden the public school that her daughter is in isn't good enough. She needs to go to a $20,000 a year private school, which I can't really feel sorry for you. One, I went to public school, and two, I don't feel like that's a hardship that you need to go around committing crime for. So it totally didn't match. I mean, if she was like a regular single character without a kid and without all these silly constraints, then maybe. And even then, I know what you're thinking, like maybe she has no support. She totally had support. She has like a really loving, supportive like mom and dad and a whole set of brothers that support her and would have helped her financially. So it doesn't make any sense why she's running around doing all these illegal activities in the name of helping to save her daughter for medical insurance things that won't get paid, right? So anyways, so that was that book. That was the last of the cozies. So then I switched over to thrillers, which I do love thrillers. Those are my favorite. So both of these thrillers, spoiler alert, I gave 5s to both of them. So the first one is Liar, Liar by Lisa Jackson. And this is about a Marilyn Monroe impersonator, and she has mysteriously disappeared. And her daughter, she has 3 kids. So the daughter is 15. She just happens to see that her mom was trying to sell the other kids. The other kids are like 1 month old. And so she's like, this is so weird. She calls a friend for help. And then all of a sudden, everybody disappears. So they have no record of the fact that her mom had twins, because her mom had done this weird switcheroo where she was going to sell one of the kids back to the dad for $250,000. And then she was going to afterwards then take him to court for child support to make him pay for the other kid so that then she'd be set up for the rest of her life. Because her, the main character, when she had her first daughter, who's now 15, she said she didn't do it correctly, and so she didn't get any child support, and so this one she wanted to like get right and do correctly. So anyways, fast forward 15 years into the future, or maybe even 20 years into the future, and nothing's been solved. Nobody knows what happens to the twins that disappeared, and the police don't believe her. They think she like made up the whole thing and she's living with her aunt. And then all of a sudden, like a memoir comes out about her mom. And then with this memoir, then people around it start dying. And so she's trying to figure it out. So I found it very interesting. I loved it. The only thing I will say is a caveat with Lisa Jackson books is that there is no happily ever after. Like usually with thrillers, like everything's evened out. The bad guy gets his comeuppance, and like the people that got kind of shafted in the beginning, they get something like happy to like even out their lives, like karma. Doesn't happen in Lisa Jackson books. So that's just something to be aware of in case, I don't know if it's important to other people. It's very important to me that like everything gets evened out at the end by karma, by the universe. But anyways, the next book is Find Her by Lisa Gardner. And this one I gave a 5 to, like I said. And this is about a vigilante who is a past kidnap rape victim. So she's kind of like Dexter, I guess. Like she actively seeks out men that were just like the man that raped and like kidnapped her, and she seeks them out to like kill them. So am I upset that they're being killed? Probably not, because they're like bad guys that were going to hurt other people. But in the meantime, she runs around and she goes to people who their daughters have been kidnapped to try to help them and like figure it out and then get them back. So I really love this book, and it did have a very satisfying ending where everything evened out. So those are all the books that I read for July. I know this was really long, so that is, I don't think I'll be reading as much in August, only because I have so many things to do for Pretty Fabulous. I have a 4-hour live stream next week on the Adobe channel that I'm doing, and then I'm speaking at the Adobe Max conference, and to be totally honest, I haven't even put the presentation for that together either. And then I have to do a lot of templates for Pretty Fabulous. I have to do all the 2022 updates. And on top of that, I have to do some writing. So I know this is a long haul, but this is probably the last long haul before we get into September, which is when the new secret project starts. So remember, clue number 5 will be dropping in this Thursday's Cozy Escape newsletter. So if you want to hear that, make sure to subscribe below. I hope everyone's having a fabulous day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.